It is a great honor and a privilege to introduce Dita Edith Kraus. Your maiden name was Polach, and you were born in Prague in Czechoslovakia back in 1929.
Yes.
Oh, so Edith, so Dita, could you tell us a little bit about your family?
My parents were, my father was called Hans. He came originally from Brünn, which is the second biggest town in Czechoslovakia. And when he married my mother, whose name was Liesl, born Adler, they moved to Prague because he was a lawyer, and he got employment at the state pension fund. He was a state employee where he worked, and we lived. I was born. I was an only child. They didn't have any more. The grandparents, my father's parents, lived also in Prague, near us, and especially my grandmother was a great influence in my life. I always wanted to be like her. She's the kindest person I ever met in my life. We lived a very secular life. We were Jewish, but I didn't know about it. We didn't celebrate any Jewish feast. I never heard the word Pesach or Rosh Hashanah. We also didn't celebrate the Christian ones. There were no my friends got presents for Christmas. I didn't. So sometimes I complained, but it was explained to me that it's not necessary. Not everybody has to. They didn't speak about different religions. I learned about Jewish. I learned that I was Jewish in grade 2 because I found a little piece of paper with one sentence: "You are a Jew." In German, I went to a German school, second grade. I took it home and I asked my mother, "What's that? What's that Jew?"
Who wrote it? Who?
I never heard a word.
But who gave you the paper?
I showed my mother the paper, and then she explained to me that there are different religions, and there are Jews and there are Christians, Protestants, Catholics. So then I only learned about it at age 8. Well, it was already by the time when Hitler threatened, not only threatened, but occupied first part of Czechia, only the border area, and then they marched into the land, and it became Protectorate Czechia and Moravia. And of course, immediately the Jews were being separate, didn't have the same rights as everybody else. It went slowly. Every few weeks, another regulation, another restriction, and they threw us out of our apartment. We had a rented apartment in a modern house, and we moved into another section of the city, and again we were thrown out from there, and then we could only rent a room, a family per room, together with other families, in only one section of the city. And then began, they stripped us of everything, of all gradually. Bank accounts were closed. People had to hand over jewelry and radios and all our possessions slowly. And then they started. My personal what hurt me was that I couldn't go to school any longer. I was 10 years old and couldn't go to school. So I have only 5 grades, regular elementary school. And then they began transporting people from the Czech lands to Terezín, which is a garrison town surrounded by a huge wall with moats and catacombs in the walls. Even the military was, of course, dispersed, and the barracks were empty, and they suited the Germans because they could close the town when the gates were closed, five gates into the city. Small town, nobody could go out or in. One day in November 1942, when I was 13, we got a notice we have to be on the next morning or in 2 days at the collection point with luggage no heavier than 50 kilograms, our possessions, and then whatever was left behind became German property. My father even had to sign at the collection point. Everybody had to sign that voluntarily they donate whatever was left behind to the German Reich. Terezín was overcrowded when we arrived. A small town that contained a number of military barracks and also private homes, family homes. The Czech population had been evicted, and so now there were only Jews with it was a run. It was maintained by the Jews themselves. There was a so-called group of elder of the Jews who were responsible for the running of the ghetto. There were departments for youth, the department for health, department for work. Everybody had to work, age 15 to 60, everybody had to work. 14, I said, 14 to 60. So when I arrived, it was almost time I had to join a group of young girls and boys who worked in the moats raising vegetables for the Nazis. We were housed separately, of course. Women and men separate, and there was also a kind of home for for children aged 10 to 16. Girls' home and boys' home, but it was voluntary. If a child wanted to stay with her mother, she could, but it was preferable because the home was run by like a kind of summer camp, you could say. The children were divided into age groups and had a house mother and a madricha, and we got some secret schooling after work, and we were among the same age group. I was there for half the time. I mean, I was accepted sometime in spring because there was no free bed. Free beds were available when there was transport from ghetto to the east, so-called east. He didn't know where it led. It was a secret. He didn't tell us. And then after a year and a month in the ghetto, we were also included in such a transport, my father, mother, and I. And then actually, I say, began Holocaust. Because ghetto was very unpleasant, but one could survive there. But Auschwitz was meant not to survive there. Ghetto was just a transit place. Slowly, they emptied the ghetto and sent the people to the concentration camps in Poland. My father died soon after arrival there in Auschwitz in February. He was 44 years old, a young man. In Auschwitz, there were sections specially for people who were shipped there from Terezin, from the Theresienstadt ghetto, where the women and men and children were in the same compound, but living in different barracks. The children could spend the day in a kind of daycare barrack, which was run by a young man, a German Jew named Freddy Hirsch, who managed to convince the Germans, the leaders there, that it would be convenient to have the children separate during the day so the adults could work. For that reason, he was allowed to concentrate children in that block, and there were activities, even secret teaching, but all orally, because there were nothing. The block was empty of just empty building with earthen floor like all the other blocks, and little chairs, stools, like something like this one. And the children were again divided into groups of the same age, and had a madrich, an adult working with them. All was oral, or games, singing, learning. There were no pencils, no pens, no paper to write anything. We had nothing but the clothes that we wore. We had no change of clothes. We were in the same clothes for the 6 months that we were in Auschwitz. And we owned a bowl, a tin bowl for soup, and a spoon. That was all. We had absolutely nothing else. Yeah, we had a blanket, but the blanket was awful. It was thin and scratchy and no good. We spent the time there in the children's block. I was allocated a special task to watch over the small number of books that had been smuggled into the children's block by Polish prisoners, by people who were sorting luggage on the ramp. And when they found a book, they somehow managed to smuggle it into a children's block. So there were some 12 books, various books, not some novels maybe, but an atlas and a history book. And still, they could be used because one could play with words, with letters, with the children. In March, we arrived in December. In March, the people who had been shipped there before us in September were collected one day and exterminated in the gas chambers. They were a few thousand, I don't know the exact number. Some exceptions were there. The doctors that were working on the sick on the block, on the hospital block with Dr. Mengele, they had been exempted and returned from the quarantine where they had been collected, and a few other, but all the rest were died that same night in the gas chambers. Among them was Freddy Hirsch. Freddy Hirsch was found in a kind of sleep. By mistake, he was considered to have taken some poison. It was rumored that he took his own life, but that wasn't so. It had been. There is evidence that he had he was given sleeping pills, which made him sleep in a deep sleep, and he couldn't be wakened when the people were shipped on the trucks. So he was sent on a stretcher. He was sent in his sleep and died together with the whole transport. Then we knew that we are going
to... You have a picture, a book of Freddy?
This is, about Freddy's life. Is a book written by a German writer, documentary, called Freddy and the Kinder and the Children of the Holocaust. I received a copy. Freddy was an athlete and a sport teacher. We admired him. Children loved him. He was a very special and influential person in our life. Already in Prague, I didn't mention that. Already in Prague, there was one sport club, one place where we could gather with Jewish children, and which was led by also, the activities were led also by Freddy. So I knew him from Prague, and then in Terezin he was given the responsibility for the children's homes in the administration, and in Auschwitz he was given this children's block to run. He died in his sleep, mourned by all of us. We knew that our turn is coming in June. We knew that we are going also to be exterminated. But in May, end of May, came a new order from Germany saying to Mengele to choose people who could still work, would still be sent to work in Germany. Germany needed workers because the men were all soldiers. So my mother and I applied, were selected by Mengele, and were sent to Germany to work.
Dita, can I ask you, do you remember meeting with Mengele or seeing him?
Yes, of course. There was we had to, first of all, we had to undress, to stand in front of him and say 3 words. We were coached to say 3 words and stand attention or nothing else. And 3 words, the number, age and profession. So I said it went 73,305, 16, because I was 15, but only people from 16 to 40 were allowed to apply, to go to the selection. So I lied about age, and I said to my profession, Malerin, painter. He even asked me if I am painting portraits, if I could paint his portrait. I said yes. but he didn't mean it. But he sent me to the group that was selected for work in Germany. We were taken by train, arrived in the outskirts of the city of Hamburg in Germany, and there we worked from July 1944 until March 1945. Hard work, hard labor. Again, very bad conditions, but hope. We had hope because we were not near the gas chambers. In March we were taken from all the smaller camps, work camps, labor camps. They were concentrated and shipped to bigger concentration camps from all over Germany. And we landed in Bergen-Belsen. Fortunately, it was only some 8, 9 or 10 days before Bergen-Belsen was liberated by the British Army. I'm sure people know about Bergen-Belsen. It was the worst of the worst because people died in the hundreds and thousands and were not buried. They lay all over the camp. The camp was filled with corpses. Fortunately, the British arrived while my mother and I were still on our feet. Nevertheless, we had to stay there because of typhoid epidemic. And only slowly in summer they started releasing people who were considered safe, not contagious any longer. But my mother didn't live so long. She died in June 29th, and on the morrow I was put on a bus, on a coach, and arrived in Prague alone. That's my story.
And then you met your husband very soon after?
My husband was one of the teachers on the children's block. And so we met somewhere and started dating, and it was 2 years later we married. I was married very, very early. I was not yet 18.
And you got married in Prague?
In Prague.
And then when did you come to Israel?
My husband was a Zionist. He had been preparing himself before the war. He wanted to make Aliyah already in 39, 38. But then it was impossible, so we when 1948 the state of Israel became independent state. So my husband immediately decided we're going to live in Israel. We already had a baby, my first son.
Sure. It's amazing, Dita, and you know, there's a book, A Delayed Life, and you just received today, they did in France a book about the librarian in Auschwitz.
Yeah, it was a comics book made from the novel of the Spanish author Iturbe.
Could you show it to? And you just received it.
It arrived an hour ago.
Just today. It's
this
done.
Is about Dita. Dita is the heroine of this book.
And this is you. Dita, it's amazing.
For example, here are the buildings in Auschwitz. That's the camp in Auschwitz. I haven't seen all the pictures yet.
And it just arrived today.
It came
it's incredible.
Today.
And did you know they were going to be doing the book?
It's a comics book. Like no? This is Dita. There is also Freddy. I'll see. Somewhere is Freddy. Quite, the drawing is quite like him because the painter used photographs, so it looks like him. Where is it? Here, for example, here. This is from a photo.
And this tells your whole life story. It's incredible. It's
one of many. One of many.
And Dita, if I can just ask you, because you're amazing. You go back to Prague and you've given many talks. What message do you impart to your grandchildren and great-grandchildren?
I feel close. I feel very well. It's a reconnecting back to childhood when I go there. Every street places remind me of here lived my friend, here I went to school, here lived my grandma. It's going back in time.
And have you ever been back to Poland, to Auschwitz?
No, I won't go there.
You can't go. It's too... And have any of your grandchildren gone, or any of your family, any of the grandchildren?
They didn't go to Auschwitz, no, but I took them to Terezin.
They have been to...
Which is again a normal town with a Czech population, and there's a museum, 2 museums, of course, and groups go there, visit, but you don't feel the ghetto that was there, overcrowded.
And Dita, what message do you give to the future generations? Oh.
I ask them to teach when they usually speak to students, young people, when they have children, teach them not to hate.
Yeah.
This is hatred. It begins with when the parents tell the child, don't play with Ali, he is black.
Yeah.
So they already, the seed is already given in separating. We are not the same, we are something better.
Because no child is ever born as a racist. No one's born hating somebody else. No one's...
Yes, it's being taught. I don't think it comes... when people don't teach it, when you go into a kindergarten, you often see children of all colors, and they are friends.
They don't see the difference.
Unless they are coached to.
That's so true. Oh, Dita, I just want to thank you. There are really no words. I'm so incredibly grateful, Dita. Really, thank you so much. I am so grateful to you, Dita.
I am not at my best today.
No, Dita, you are amazing.
Hoarse and
Dita,
my throat hurts, and when you go, I'll go to bed.
Dita, I am so grateful that you've done this, and you are an inspiration, and you should just continue at Mayvestream to 120 in good health.
I do.
And nachas from your dear children and your family. And I am so grateful to you. You are an inspiration to all of us. Dita, you are really incredible. And I hope this book that just came today, it's unbelievable. It's incredible. Well, thank you so much, Dita. God bless.
I never refuse. Well, Dita, as long as I can talk, okay.
Thank you so much. Dita, so you actually, this was the number. And what was you remember the number?
70, you'll never forget. 73,305. I had to shout it twice a day. Twice a day we were counted, and we had to shout in Auschwitz, we shouted the number. We stood in rows of 5 and were counted, stood outside in the snow.
And in a way, Mengele in a way saved your life by him allowing you to join. You were only 15, and by you saying that you were 16, it saved your life.
Yes, otherwise I would not be here.
It's a miracle. It's really a miracle.
When I returned to Prague, there were no younger persons than my age alive.
Indeed, and your grandparents and the rest of your family?
My grandmother survived in Terezin, but not my parents and no uncles, only the grandmother. No uncles, no cousins. I never counted them. Sometimes I hear people say we lost 40 relatives, 30 relatives. I never counted them. I know my father had a brother who immigrated to Israel, so he wasn't there. My mom had a brother. He was married to a non-Jewish woman, and he wasn't persecuted. He had no children. So I had only cousins of my parents, uncles done with children. I have photos. My mom was very practical, and she gave her brother our albums. And after the war, when I returned, he gave them back to me. So I have photos, family photos.
And those are the
Not
only
many
memories.
people thought about it, and they don't have their pictures of their parents.
Do you have a picture of your mother and your father?
Yes, I have many pictures.
Oh, if we can just...
Mom and father. These are my grandparents.
Oh, indeed, if I can just... This is so special. So this is a picture of your grandparents. Wow.
My grandfather was a professor of Latin and Greek.
In Prague?
In Prague? No, in Brno.
In Brno. But in Czechoslovakia?
This is my mom and father and me in the middle.
This is so precious. Yeah, it's like your mother had like a nevuah. She had a premonition that she had to give the photos.
Yeah.
Otherwise you wouldn't have these pictures.
That's right.
And the picture above?
This is after the war. They sent me, my grandmother survived, I told you. So that was her, the cremation. I don't know the people here. They sent me a picture. I was already in Israel when she died. This is not important. Here they are again, my parents.
Yeah, they were so special.
A bit later. This is already in 36. Okay. Again, my grandma. This is how I looked when I returned. My grandma, 1946.
And this is
grandfather.
In 1924.
Mm-hmm.
These are so precious. Dita, thank you so much.
Yes.
And Dita, lastly, can I ask you, are you, looking back, are you happy that you came to Israel?
My husband wanted to come to Israel. He was a Zionist. And I went along. I had no wishes of my own.
But are you happy with the decision? You happy you came here?
Not always. But all in all, yes.
All in all, yes.
I think a Jew belongs here.
That is wonderful. And your children live here and grandchildren?
They live in Jerusalem. I have left one son alive. He's in Netanya near me with wife and children.
And the other rest of the family are in Jerusalem.
And grandsons and great-grandchildren are in Jerusalem.
Well, Dita, I am so grateful to you, and you should just be well and have ani nachas and all of you should just keep on smiling and keep on doing the most amazing work that you do.
Thank you.
You are really an inspiration to all of us.
Thank you.